It's time for number 36 in my series of video game movie reviews, with a sequel to one of the best video game movies made to this point. So can it keep up with the quality of its predecessor? Silent Hill Revelation is brought to us by director Michael J. Bassett and stars Adelaide Clemens, Kit Harington, and Sean Bean. Oh shit, he survived the last movie. It's a few years after the original Silent Hill, somewhere in the neighborhood of probably about 8 if I had to guess, because Sharon is now about to be 18. Sharon, played by Adelaide Clemens, and her father, Christopher, played by Sean Bean, are on the run. For the past few years, they've been going from town to town, changing their identities along the way so that the people from Silent Hill can't find them. Unfortunately, all that catches up with them, and one day Sharon comes home and finds her father has been kidnapped and taken to Silent Hill. And now Sharon and her new friend Vincent, name doesn't sound suspect at all, have to travel to Silent Hill to rescue her father and solve the mystery that is Silent Hill. If you've been watching this series, you'll know that I said that the original Silent Hill was one of the better video game movies ever made. It had its flaws, but it was an entertaining ride, and it very much kept with the source material's tone. They tried to keep to the spirit of the source material while still telling their own story, and they were more or less successful there. And all in all, it was a good movie. So how about the sequel? Do you think this one followed suit? No. It didn't. Unfortunately, Silent Hill Revelation is a letdown. I remember seeing this movie when it first came out. I was pretty excited about it because I really enjoyed the first one. But oh boy was I disappointed, and I haven't watched it since then up until watching it for this review. In all these years since it came out in 2012, I've been pretty much of the mind that it just overall sucked. Now I will say that this time around, it wasn't as bad as I remember. That don't mean it was good though. About the first half to maybe 2/3 of the movie is okay. There is at least the mystery of why people are still in Silent Hill and what Sharon is needed to do here. We know from the first movie that the evil antagonist Alyssa split herself in half and made Sharon the good side of her and sent her out into the world so that she could have a life. And now she's been drawn back to Silent Hill so that they can be merged back together for some reason. We don't really know why. That is the mystery that we have in the first half to 2/3 of the movie. Now beyond that mystery, there's not really a whole lot going on here. The fantastic atmosphere and tone of the first movie is just not here. They try and have it, but that's how the movie comes off. It just seems like a movie trying to be the first movie. It's nowhere near as dark and sinister, and there's a shit ton of jump scares throughout this movie. It's one of the things I applauded the first movie for. While yeah, it had a couple of jump scares, the majority of that movie was all about the creepy, unsettling tone and imagery. Here it's more about demented looking things just jumping out at the screen just really loud all the time. Speaking of really loud, this movie takes that shit to the max. You can always tell when something's about to happen because in one of the most cliched moves in horror movie history, everything in the movie gets really low. And you're just waiting. You're just sitting there going, okay, here it comes. Do it. Where's it coming from? What's it gonna be? What's gonna... There it is. And that's not scary. That's startling. There is a difference between scary and startling. Startling happens and you just kind of go, oh man, shit, whoo, and then you're over it. Scary is some shit that stays with you after the end of the movie. There's nothing that stays with you after the end of this movie except for the bad taste of the fucking movie. Gone also is the great set design from the first movie. These environments that they're in here are just kind of bland, kind of old looking rundown environments. They don't really scream Silent Hill to you. And the CGI fog is pretty ridiculous. Yes, they had it in the first movie too, but it didn't come across as noticeable there as it does here. Now CGI is one spot for the most part where this movie does one up the first one. I thought the first movie had pretty good effects, especially for a 2006 movie. However, this one, the special effects are as a whole better than the first one, but not a tremendous amount better, and there are a couple of parts where the CGI is a bit dodgy. All that aside though, I will say that overall the effects are a little bit more crisp than they were in the first one. This movie was shot specifically for 3D, so if you're not watching it in 3D, you're gonna really know that it was made for 3D because it comes from that time when 3D meant shit popping out at the screen, not depth or making things look better. No, there's tons and tons of shots of just stuff coming out of the screen. Every opportunity somebody has something. And you can always see it coming. When somebody will will be sitting there with like a sword or something, you know at some point in time in the next couple of seconds, that sword is going to be thrust out towards the screen. So if you were wearing 3D glasses, you'd be like, oh my, it almost hit me in the fucking head. Now I own the 3D Blu-ray of this movie, but I didn't watch it in 3D this time. However, the first time I watched it, I did. And even though I didn't care for the movie, I do remember thinking, well, the 3D effects were at least good. They were all cheap 3D effects that just came out of the screen, but those cheap 3D effects coming out of the screen did look like good cheap 3D effects coming out of the screen. Not really any extra depth or anything that I remember, but the stuff coming out of the screen did look cool in 3D. So if you're just dead set on watching this movie and you have the opportunity to watch it in 3D, that's not a terrible experience. Now, even with the more bland environments and fairly dull story, I was on board with the movie more or less until about the final third to quarter of the flick. This is when shit went just totally off the rails. I was suspending disbelief up to that point, but then it just loses it all and makes no fucking sense whatsoever. They're like running around the town trying to get away from these guys and everything, having some really creepy imagery, kind of sort of like the first one, and then all of a sudden they're under fucking ground and there's like a cult. Albino Trinity from the Matrix shows up for whatever reason. Suddenly she turns into a fucking Cenobite for some reason and starts fighting with Pyramid Head. None of it really makes any sense whatsoever. They try with a few lines of dialogue to make it make sense, but just because you connect some dots does not mean it makes fucking sense. And then it just suddenly ends, and it's like, okay, well, I guess that's a conclusion. But I mean, at that point, you're kind of grateful that it just went ahead and ended because you're just pretty much fucking over it by then. Now, the movie does have a pretty robust cast, with Adelaide Clemens, pre-Game of Thrones Kit Harington, Malcolm McDowell, Sean Bean, Carrie-Anne Moss, and more. And even though it does have all of this talent on the screen, I can't really say any of it is utilized. Sean Bean would probably be the only one that actually gives any effort. He's not in the movie a ton, but when he is in it, he does bring a level of gravity to the scenes that he's in. And it seems that even though he knows he's in this terrible movie, he is going to give it his all. He's honestly probably just really happy that he didn't die in the last movie and actually made it to a sequel. Clemens and Harrington as the two stars of the movie do okay. I guess they're not absolutely terrible, but they're far from great. If the rest of the movie had been entertaining and cool, then you'd be able to deal with that. However, just being okay in a fairly dull movie just makes that okay performance stand out even more. Malcolm McDowell shows up for a little bit and he hams it up to the 10th degree. That part of the movie, I will admit, was a bit over the top, but it was at least fun. It was memorable. And then Carrie-Anne Moss shows up, and I don't know what the fuck she was thinking. This character, her performance, just everything about her in this movie is just fucking bad. And we've seen her be good in things, so we know that she's capable of it. But here, she's just not okay. She's just fucking bad. As a whole, the performances in this movie at best are just kind of and really, they verge more on just bad for the most part. Unfortunately, there's just not much of anything that Silent Hill Revelation offers this genre, this series, or film in general. It's got fairly lackluster performances. Overall, the technical side of it doesn't stand up to the original. The story's fairly dull and incomprehensible, and overall, it's just a major downgrade from the original movie. So unless you're into some decent looking 3D effects, there's not really much reason to watch Silent Hill Revelation. But if you feel like you just have to see it, or you're a masochist, at best, check out Silent Hill Revelation on USA Up All Night.
It's not worth it!
Hi, I'm Gilbert Gottfried.
Hi, it's Ron on USA.
It's so big. It's just not worth it!
I was pretty disappointed in this movie overall, especially coming off the last one. It seems like they were just trying to copy the first movie, but unfortunately, all they did was copy the worst parts of the first movie. And I really can't come up with much of any reason for anyone to ever give this movie a shot. So there it is, guys, my review of Silent Hill Revelation. If you enjoyed, want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Silent Hill.
Go to hell! We're already here.
What's next on the video game movie review list? Ooh, it's been a while since I've seen this one, and I at least remember it wasn't terrible.